Today I want to teach you how to cut and put together this beautiful 3D paper holiday lantern. I'll also show you the best way to light it up without getting glue everywhere. And I'll share some great resources on getting to know your Cricut better along the way. So sit back and watch how to create this lantern, and then make sure you have the right stuff to make your own. When you're ready, just replay and go step by step with me, pausing when you need to. So I just love these lanterns, especially how the light shines through the layers and all the little cutouts. They really prove how gorgeous simple cardstock can be, because that's really all this is made out of. It's just really cardstock. Of course, the dome and the lights I added really make it look super special, but you could also just keep it simple with just cardstock. And look at the details the Cricut was able to cut out. Can you imagine cutting this by hand? No, thank you. I would rather get some help. But there are some really important steps to getting these perfect cuts like this. It is all about the paper, the mat, and your material settings. So first, you want to make sure you have good, high-quality cardstock in the correct weight. Better quality cardstock is made with longer, more uniform fibers, so they cut instead of tear when the blade goes through them. The 65-pound white cardstock in my materials list for the main pieces cuts beautifully on the Cricut and is flexible enough to curve nicely. Now, the star pieces are really pretty small and need to have crisp, precise folds to look nice. I tried several options before deciding on this 8.5 by 11 inch 92-pound gold glitter cardstock. Isn't it pretty? Now, the important thing to look for is 250 GSM or thinner glitter cardstock. GSM stands for grams per square meter, or the weight of a meter of the paper. If it's higher than 250 grams per square meter, it will be too thick to crease and glue correctly. Did you ever think you'd be investigating the weight of your crafting supplies? Sometimes paper crafters have to get the best results, but I love doing that research and testing for you. As I like to say, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. Now, I use my Cricut Maker 3 to cut the cardstock, but the Explorer, Explorer Air 2, Explorer 3, Original Maker, Venture, and even the Cricut Joy Extra will cut everything out with no problems. The cuts are pretty intricate. If you want to shrink it to fit on a Joy, you could, but I don't really recommend it. But hey, if you want to try it, go ahead and let us know. Now, I used a green standard grip machine mat for all the cardstock, but do note that I started with a fresh mat for this project. Keeping your cardstock perfectly in place on a sticky mat really lets the Cricut work at its peak efficiency, so it's less likely to tear the paper. I'll show you how to get clean, complete cuts every time with a few extra tips later in this video too. And finally, how do you keep the cut layers together without getting glue everywhere? I have some great tips for you on that, including my favorite one to use with glue to put it right where you need it to make something sticky and nowhere else. Also, these reverse tweezers right here and some clear glue dots will be really important too. Remember, check out my tools and materials list for details on everything that I'm using here, including links on where to get them reliably. Then we'll use one of my favorite combinations, clear glue dots and fairy lights, to finish assembling and lighting it all up. So let me show you how to get the free design files for our lantern, and then we'll get started in Cricut Design Space. Step 1, get my free lantern designs. First, download the free template below this video. Inside the template folder, you'll see there are two versions of the design. One with score lines that you can cut using a scoring tool or scoring wheel, and one with dashed cut lines that only needs the fine point blade that came with your Cricut. The scored version has the words score tool or stylus in the file name, and the dashed cut line version has the words no score tool needed in the file name. I'm going to show you how to make the version with dashed cut lines because I find it easier to assemble and you might too. But if you'd like to try the scored version, you can follow my scoring tutorial over at jennifermaker.com/cricut-scoring. You can use the steps to adjust the score lines as needed, Note that the base also has guidelines that you can convert to scores or draw on with a Cricut pen if you'd like. All right, so to begin, let's go to Cricut Design Space and upload your chosen file. If you're not sure how to upload files, jennifermaker.com/svgs is a good tutorial. Step 2, prepare your design. You can ungroup the pieces and spread them out. The pieces for each ring are also ungrouped, so ungroup them to see everything. There, can you see the details better now? And you can see that the layers get taller as we go toward the middle, which will help give the finished layer depth. Now I've designed the lantern to fit the dome that's in my materials list, which is 9.8 inches by 5 3/4 inches. But you can resize it to fit another size dome. The dome is completely optional, of course, but I will show you how to make your design fit a dome just in case you also want to use one. So carefully measure your dome's diameter and height. The design will work best in a dome that's a similar shape to mine. So back in Cricut Design Space, there are 2 spots to watch while resizing. The circular base for the diameter or the width, and the height of a tree plus its star for how tall it will be. So I'll select the base in the Layers panel, and it's 5.7 inches wide, or about 0.05 inches smaller than the dome's diameter. Then select the first star and the first tree layers. Their height together is 9.89 inches, which is pretty close to the height of my dome. But once it's assembled and the bottom tabs are folded, it will be shorter than the dome. That's important. If you need to resize the design, click Select All and group the design again. Keep the lock icon at the top closed, and then click and drag a corner of the entire design to resize it until the circular base piece is 0.05 inches smaller than your dome's diameter. Then check that the tree and star are still about the height of your dome or shorter. Now, since I'm going to use the original dome that's on my materials list, I'll click the undo arrow to get back to the unchanged design. So once the design is the correct size, you are ready to cut. Make sure the correct machine is selected and then click Make. On the Prepare screen, you should have 5 white mats and 1 yellow mat if you're using the same materials as I am. If you're using the gold glitter cardstock in my materials list, which I really do recommend, go to the yellow mat and change the material size to 8.5 by 11 inches, the letter size. Now we're all set, so click Continue. Step 3, cut your lamp layers. For the white layers, I found that the medium cardstock setting works really well. Just be sure to change the pressure to more. This setting worked well for me, but remember that all machines are just a little different. It's always a good idea to try a test cut to see how your combination of machine, material, and setting works before really getting far into a project. Check the Remember Material Settings box to save time between cuts too. Now, intricate cuts work best when the cardstock is super secure on the mat. So I like to use a relatively new and very sticky green standard grip machine mat. If your mat has been used a lot and you don't have a new mat, I do have some tips on how you can regain some of their stickiness over at jennifermaker.com/Cricut mats. So you just want to use your stickiest mat. Put your cardstock on your mat face up, and then, very importantly, use a brayer to roll over the entire surface with some pressure. The brayer really helps the paper stick so it stays in place, which means you get a better cut. It makes a difference. Also, be sure to check that your fine point blade is clean. If you've been cutting a lot lately, especially anything with vinyl, adhesive, or with glitter, there could be little debris or adhesive stuck on your blade. So to do this, in case you've never done it before, you push down on the housing's plunger so the blade sticks out some more, and then carefully poke the tip of the aluminum foil several times. Remember, this doesn't sharpen the blade, but it will knock off anything stuck to it that might interfere with cutting. And then set the ball aside, but I recommend using it every few mats just in case. You can put it right into the compartment on your Cricut if you want. And then put the blade back into the clamp. When you're all ready, press the flashing load and unload button to load your prepared machine mat into your Cricut. And then just press the flashing go button to begin cutting. And watch the magic happen. When it's finished cutting, unload your mat and flip the mat over onto your work surface. And then gently roll the mat back to release the cardstock. Doing this helps prevent tearing and ripping and curling, and it preserves the lovely state of your cut cardstock. Now, if any delicate pieces don't want to come off, gently slide a spatula underneath to lift them. And if there are any little cutouts stuck in your pieces, use a weeding tool or tweezers to gently pull them off. And be careful, you don't want to rip anything. And place your cut pieces face up so you remember their orientations. Now, before you start the next set of cuts, use a scraper to remove any cutouts left on your machine mat by gently running the straight edge over them. Even tiny pieces can create bumps, which will keep your mat from sticking completely or make the blade jump during cutting. And then use the same steps to cut the rest of your white mats. If you run into any cutting issues not solved by cleaning the blade or using a sticky mat, I have more tips that you can try over at jennifermaker.com/blades. Here's how all of my tree and layer pieces look after they're cut. For the yellow mat, search for and select the glitter cardstock setting, and then set the pressure to more again. I really think this makes a difference in getting a nice clean cut. Use the same steps to cut the stars, but don't unload the mat right away. First, gently lift some paper near a star to make sure the cuts went all the way through, because sometimes cuts on glitter cardstock just don't go all the way through on the first pass. If that happens, you don't have to redo the whole thing. Just put the cardstock back in place on the mat, and then just press that middle cut button again to run the design in the exact same spot. Now they should all come off the mat easily. And there are my stars. Step 4. Assemble your Winter Village lantern. Place the 6 tree pieces and the 6 star pieces face up. Each piece has a dashed line down the middle. Let's start with a tree. Fold each piece along the line to make a valley fold. That's when the crease makes the paper look like a valley when you look at it from the side. Use a scraper to make the crease really straight. Fold all the trees the same way. When you get to the stars, fold them the same way, but be careful because they're delicate. It's important to get their creases straight, but don't press super hard with the scraper. Now, once everything is folded, grab your good quality craft glue. I'm using my favorite Barely Precision Art craft glue with the metal ultra fine tip. Now take a folded star and add just a bit of glue to the bottom rectangle on the glitter side. Now take a folded tree piece and place the tip of the star's rectangle so the creases align and the rectangle is mostly covered. Hold the pieces in place for at least 10 seconds so the glue can dry. The reverse action tweezers can keep the star right in position without getting glue all over your fingers. Now take another star piece, but this time put some glue on one side of the back. I'll use the paper to the left of the crease. Avoid the heart cutout, but get a little glue near the star's tips. This is where that ultra-fine tip really helps. Align the edges of the glued side with the correct back half of the already attached star. Press them together to sandwich the tree piece and adjust it to line up the star edges and hold it to dry. Add glue to the back half of another tree piece, avoiding the cutouts. But get glue close to the very tips of the branches and on the bottom tab so they'll stick well. Attach the glued section to the first tree piece on the same side as the attached star, aligning the tree halves at their edges. Make sure all the tips, cutouts, and tabs are lined up before the glue dries. Now the first star piece's rectangle is sandwiched between tree layers. This technique makes the tree and star joint more secure and glittery from every angle. Continue adding your pieces in the same manner with the star first and then a tree piece until you have just one of each left. Now, instead of gluing one side of the last star's back, add glue to both sides and attach it to both of the other stars, covering up the last white surfaces. Add the last tree piece the same way, and your 3D tree is complete. Once it's all dry, hold the assembled tree upside down so you can see the tabs. Pick which direction to fold them. I'll make mine point counterclockwise. Fold each one right where the tab meets the tree's bottom edge. Make them as straight and as uniform as possible so they're easier to work with. Find the circular base piece. The X in the middle is where the tree's middle will go, so make sure you can see it. Now add glue to the bottom of the 6 tree tabs. Place the assembled tree in the center of the circular base so it's lined up with the X. Press down to adhere the tabs around it. Make sure everything is dry before letting it stand on its own. Now let's attach the layers and lights. Now for the pieces that create the scene around the tree, make sure everything is laid out correctly, just like you see here on my screen. Find the 2 long pieces with houses for the innermost layer. On the piece with one house, add a line of glue on the left tab. Take the piece with 2 houses and line up the right edge over the glued tab. Make sure the tops and bottoms of the snow areas are level with each other. The edge of the left piece shouldn't extend past the small tab on the bottom of the right piece, and press it in place to dry. Once it's dry, gently roll the assembled layer into a tube to create a soft, gentle curve. You can use a cylindrical object such as a tube of vinyl to help you do this. And you might need to help the larger house curve, so make sure it isn't staying flat or it could rip later. Glue the ends of the layer together to form a cylinder shape. Curl the layer so the ends overlap by about 1/4 inch and the top and bottom edges are smooth. It doesn't matter which end goes on the inside of the tube, but add some glue to one end and hold it to dry. Use the same process to assemble the middle fence layer. The fence posts on the left of each piece will overlap on top of the horizontal slats on the right end of the opposite piece. Then assemble the outer layer. Make sure the top snowy edge is nice and smooth. Now we can light it all up. Unwind your fairy lights and turn them on to make sure they work. Keep them off during assembly to give your eyes a break and save the battery too. Use a small glue dot to secure the strand's loose end between the tree's tabs and the first guide circle. Use small dots every few inches to secure the lights around the tree once. You can play with the scenes by nesting them together and rotating the layers around each other, but it's easiest if the semicircle cutouts at the bottom are close to each other. That's where we'll run the lights. Separate the layers. Take the inner house layer and fold the bottom tabs toward the inside. Make sure the folds are uniform and flush with the tube's bottom edge. Fold the other layer's tabs the same way. Each of the layers will roughly line up with one of the circle guides on the base. Turn the base so the last spot you attach the lights is visible. Position the loose lights straight out from the last glue dot. I'm using small glue dots to put the rest together because they're easier to reposition than glue, but you can use either option. Add glue dots to the bottom of 2 tabs around the little cutout on the innermost house layer. Carefully lower the tube over the tree and onto the circle base. Make sure the semicircle cutout for the lights is near where you stopped attaching the lights to the base. Rotate the house tube a bit if you want to change the composition, but try to keep the light cutout close to the strand. Then make sure the strand is through the cutout and the tube is lined up with the guide circle. Use a thin object with a blunt end, like the handle end of your spatula or weeding tool, to press the glued tabs down. Once the first tabs are secure, carefully lift the layer near another tab and sneak a glue dot onto its bottom. Align the tab section as closely as you can with the guide and press down with your tool to adhere it. Secure the last tab too. It's totally okay if the layers don't line up perfectly with the guides. Just try to keep each one from getting really close to the next guide. Wind the lights around the outside of the attached layer, securing them with a few evenly spaced glue dots. Remember, don't let the lights extend past the next circle guide. Use the same process to attach the fence layer on the middle guide circle and add the next section of lights around the outside. If there are any lights left on the strand that will go past the outer guide circle, wrap them around the middle layer one more time until all the lights are used and the free wire is near the cutout again. Tweezers can help you if you have trouble positioning the lights so they stay away from the next guide circle. Then add the last layer on the outermost circle guide. Remember to run the last strand out through the last cutout too. Place the bottom of the assembled lantern onto your wooden base if you're using a dome. If you're nervous about moving it, just use a few glue dots to keep it in place. Carefully place the glass dome down on top of your assembled lantern. The outermost layer will be very close to the glass, so be careful of any intricate pieces that could get caught on the edge, like the snowman's arms. Now clean the outside of your glass dome with some alcohol and a lint-free cloth to remove any dust or fingerprints. And you can leave the battery pack loose so it's easy to reach, and then just tuck it out of view. Step 5, show it off. And here's our finished 3D paper holiday lantern. You can display it with or without the wooden base and dome. It looks great on a shelf or a table or a mantle, and it really shines in the dark. It is just gorgeous. I love this. Would you like to make a lantern with a different village scene? You can get my template and learn how to customize your design through a special program called Advance over at jennifermaker.com/advance. The Advance program helps to advance your crafting skills by teaching you how to make these popular designs unique and special through tutorials and templates, as well as give you advanced access to my vast library of designs, projects, and resources. Now, I may or may not be accepting new members into the Advance program at the time you see this, but if you're interested, go to jennifermaker.com/advance to learn more and see how it all works. So what do you think of this paper lantern? Can't you just picture it on your mantle or a bookcase for the holiday season? Maybe even year-round because it's just so pretty, isn't it? Now, a little dusting should keep the lantern looking lovely. If you do need to move the lantern, be careful because the dome isn't attached, which I think is kind of a cool thing. Now, if you need any help using Cricut Design Space, I've got you covered with a free mini course I call Cricut Kickoff. You can sign up totally free over at cricutkickoff.com. I'd love to show you how to make this magic too, because it's so awesome to be able to do things like this. I hope you found this workshop helpful and that you'll make your very own paper lantern. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help, and I would love to see your lanterns. Please take photos of them and share them with me. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.